Hey, would you rather listen to this podcast from your favorite device on the go? Why not listen to this episode of Smash Talk on Spotify? Link in the description.
Hello everybody, welcome to this episode of Smash Talk, officially titled the one where Andy doesn't get to play. You see, recently we did a review of Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. At the very end, well, you should probably watch it. At the very end, we said this.
To save you the trouble and us some time, those are my final thoughts on this game, and Breath of the Wild as a whole.
Well, it's not true because we have several more thoughts about it, and Andy wrote them all in a very long document that he's going to be reading throughout this whole episode. It's going to be me playing while he reads. Official title, the one where Andy doesn't get to have fun.
Hooray. It's not like I wanted to play, whatever. Ugh.
You hate this game.
I don't hate it.
You hate this game.
Okay.
You hate this game.
Alright, say it enough times.
Yeah, exactly.
The internet won't get angry.
No, it won't. It can't get angry at me now. I've said it enough times.
That's what the
It's
rule
an opinion they know. Okay, so, whenever you feel like starting, Andy, please take us on a trip through your mind.
Okay.
Boring!
There's a disclaimer at the beginning, of course.
Okay.
Spoilers? Yeah. I'm writing these thoughts after stipulating the following. I put a couple hundred hours of my life into playing Breath of the Wild. I purchased and played both DLC packs and put 100% and have 100% completion save file.
You've already fucked up.
Thanks. Except the remaining Korok seeds, cause screw that. I put a couple hundred hours into playing Hyrule Warriors on Wii U. I purchased and played every DLC character and map. I put a couple hundred hours into playing Hyrule Warriors Legends on 3DS. I purchased and played every DLC character and map. I put a couple hundred hours into playing Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition on the Switch. No DLC came out for that, but I totally would've. Despite all of that, I do not by any means consider myself an expert or a hardcore player or a competitive Warriors game player or anything like that.
There's competitive Warriors game players?
I guarantee it. In general, I'm an incredibly casual player of games, and something about the Hyrule Warriors games just captured me. All three versions were great. I only mention the above so that I have the proper context for the following jumble of thoughts and criticisms about Age of Calamity. I will be referencing Breath of the Wild frequently since Age of Calamity is a supposed prequel. I will reference the previous Hyrule Warriors games frequently, all three versions, since it's technically a next entry, as it were. If you think it's unfair to compare a game that exists in this kind of gray area of being between two different series, I can agree with that. Age of Calamity is its own product with its own merits. However, it was also heavily marketed as a prequel to Breath of the Wild and borrows quite a few of its mechanics and world, and literally has Hyrule Warriors in the title. With all of that said, I'd like to talk about what I thought of Age of Calamity while I'm still currently playing it, jotting down scatterbrain notes as I go. If you'd like to avoid spoilers, halt your reading now, since I will go into the story and unlockables and such.
Halt your reading?
Addendum. I have now completed the game at about 80 hours of gameplay.
Okay, I would also like to point out, you're not currently playing it.
No, that's the addendum.
Oh, that's okay. Also, go ahead. No, that's complaint about this game, not about the game you're about to talk about. Please just continue with your thoughts.
Don't worry, James. It's not confusing that you're playing Smash while I'm reading Age of Calamity.
What I'm playing is Link. Does that count?
Yeah.
Die,
oh,
you
dear.
dragon!
Are you? Whoa! How'd you do that?
I didn't. He killed himself.
Okay. Overall, still just thinking about that. Overall, I do think the combat in Age of Calamity is better than Hyrule Warriors, which was already fun to begin with. The Hyrule Warriors game seem to enjoy throwing big boss characters at you to denote checkpoints of progress during missions, and in order to damage them significantly, you need to expose a weak point. The initial Hyrule Warriors and its ports had you just wait for a certain specific attack to occur, and then you capitalize by using an item over and over again until they melted. Age of Calamity speeds up this process by offering many more opportunities to empty the weak point gauge and deal a heavy-hitting attack. You can damage it after an enemy uses a certain combo, after breaking their guard using the SHEIKAH SLATE, during a flurry rush, after a shield parry, getting a headshot, by using the special attack, by using a certain combo attack. Boss enemies feel decently vulnerable now. Before I go any further, I want to confirm some small things that I think are excellent about Age of Calamity. First off, no more durability. Instant brilliance. How did they think of this? 10 out of 10 idea. Second, music. I'm so happy to...
how these are just fucking great digs at Breath of the Wild. Just like, first, durability! How did they think of this?
Yeah, I'm not bitter. Second, music. I'm so happy to be playing a Zelda game with music again. There are now 5 Zelda games on the Switch, 4 of them have music, and 3 of them have great music. Third, there's a blacksmith. This must be unbelievable to the denizens of Hyrule. Who is this guy? What does he do? And how? You mean weapons are made and not found and then shattered? I'll only participate if I can do it dozens of times.
Jesus Christ. Please continue.
Fourth, there's a wall jump button. Anytime I want, I can just wall jump. I pretty much never bother doing it, and whenever it happens by accident, I'm furious. But I still find it a hilarious feature.
Oh my god.
Seeing as to how this game was heavily marketed as a Breath of the Wild prequel, and mysteriously the marketing stopped there, I walked into Age of Calamity expecting just that. I was hoping to see significant story beats that were only glossed over in Breath of the Wild. Zelda struggling to awaken her power, the moments where Link identifies more as a protector than a common knight. The champions bearing the weight of the world on their shoulders and learning they aren't doing it alone. And ultimately, it isn't enough. Hyrule Castle falls, the king dies, Impa takes Link to the Shrine of Resurrection, Zelda returns the Master Sword and faces Ganon alone, the champions die, the Hyrulean knights hermit in Akkala Citadel. Akkala?
Aka-laka-laka.
Citadel, for as long as they can. I genuinely thought that the final mission of this game was going to be only 2 possibilities. Either Link and Zelda facing off against an endless swarm of guardians until your resources run dry and your health runs out in a recreation of the flashback from Breath of the Wild.
Foreshadowing?
Or a sequence where you tirelessly defend Akkala Citadel and its surrounding outposts until they're inevitably overrun with Ganon's monsters and you're forced to watch your allies surrender one after the other.
That one is also foreshadowing.
But that's not the story of Age of Calamity. And really, Age of Calamity isn't quite a Breath of the Wild prequel. It takes place 100 years or so before Breath of the Wild, but by its use of time travel and a few hidden tooltips during loading screens, Age of Calamity takes place in an entirely separate timeline that has absolutely no impact on Breath of the Wild, nor Zelda as a whole.
Excuse me?
Which, to be clear, is okay. It's just not what they were advertising here. If you wanted to do a game that has no bearing on Breath of the Wild's story or its characters, fine. At least be upfront about it. Here I am, innocent November 20th self, walking in wondering how these story events and actions are going to impact character motivations and relationships, only for the grand resolution to basically amount to, it was all a dream. So, okay, my problem with the story is that it isn't canon? At first, yes, but moving past that, how is the story? It's not good. If you played Breath of the Wild, it goes through the same hits of Zelda scooping up all of the champions, then Link, getting the Master Sword, extremely early by the way, and facing the Yiga clan. The only surprising thing, for me I suppose, was when the Calamity struck, causing Hyrule to fall, and it wasn't the end of the game. After that, you then rescue the champions from the Blights with the help of the champions' counterparts from the future. A future that doesn't exist since the past is being changed. Because of time travel, and definitely not fan service, Sidon and 3 other champions, who are playable too, and all of them managed to rescue the buy enough time for the player character to rescue the champions. Something that should be noted about Age of Calamity's story is the main character, which is definitely not Link. It's Zelda. Zelda, as a character, goes through quite a few character moments, a complete arc, and has plenty of dialogue about her motivations and inner thoughts. Link, on the other hand, almost comes across as a comic relief character. Zelda, as a main character though, is executed rather poorly, in a near fairy tale way. She does have some strong moments that expand on her self-doubt in the face of Link's divine purpose and being surrounded by strong individuals, and the conflict with her father, the king, is expanded on and given new angles. But for these to be expanded on, they don't necessarily need to be resolved in a neat little bow. For example, Zelda is worried that she won't be able to unite and lead her people against the greatest cataclysm Hyrule has ever witnessed. How can she quell her fear? Give her a scene where she stands on a wall and has a rousing speech to rally the troops, which consists of every allied army in the 5 regions. And then, in the very next scene, which lasts less than 1 minute and has 1 line of dialogue, have the Yiga clan join her, as though a direct result of that speech. Zelda constantly doubts her own innate abilities won't manifest. And this is compounded when she looks at Link, who was chosen by the Master Sword because he possesses the spirit of a courageous hero. This was present in Breath of the Wild, and although it was a strong and relatable character arc, the resolution was a bit clumsy, with Zelda just suddenly having her powers at the exact correct moment. How could Age of Calamity address this? Give her a scene where Impa compliments Zelda for having tactical intelligence rather than combat prowess, and then later have Zelda suddenly manifest her powers in nearly the exact same way. King Roam and Zelda have a complicated relationship strained by the oncoming calamity. And because the calamity strikes in the middle of things, they don't get an opportunity to properly reconcile. It was heartbreaking, but realistic. Does Age of Calamity maintain this tragedy? At first, it does expand on it by giving King Roam one of those Hollywood-style, "go on without me" deaths. But then it turns out he's alive, just waiting at the Temple of Time on top of the Great Plateau, doing nothing to help. And then Zelda and the King reconcile their years of not communicating in mere moments, while their murderous-turned-traitorous Yiga clan cheer on in the back row.
Back row 'em.
Yeah. Zelda's mother isn't present in Breath of the Wild, and is briefly mentioned as having passed away in her diary. Perhaps Age of Calamity could expand on what happened, or how this affected Zelda and her father.
Nah.
Or they could just use it as leverage for the origin story of that Terraco diminutive guardian thing. I do think Zelda is a much improved character in Age of Calamity, but some of her character moments are a little too good to be true, as though the only way to get through her diary from Breath of the Wild was to adapt every third page. And it's especially a shame since Zelda appears to be the only one given any characterization. The other champions remain their squeaky clean, one-note selves. The time travel characters don't bring with them any future knowledge or development or complications, and the hidden unlockable characters don't offer any intrigue to the story. Watching gameplay of Age of Calamity before release, I was a bit worried about how the presentation of the gameplay would work. That is to say, there's only one mode, and really only one menu in Age of Calamity, which streamlines and combines everything. The main story missions, the side missions, the shops where you can buy supplies, the blacksmith where you can manage weapons, the training where you can level up or practice with characters, the skill trees and stats for each individual character, all of that is one grand map. If that sounds overwhelming and difficult to navigate, that's because it is. In the first Hyrule Warriors, if you wanted to do story stuff, you went to story mode. If you wanted to do gameplay and that didn't advance any kind of story, you went into adventure mode and selected a map. If you wanted to level up a character, you selected their skill tree, which is broken down into various categories. In Age of Calamity, everything is just thrown at a wall and left there. If you want Sidon to have more health, you need to find it in the haystack of other objectives. If you need to complete Impa's combo list, you need to triangulate it among all of the other Impa-related items. Or maybe you haven't found the mission yet, since side mission availability is tied to story progress.
I want to be Kirby now.
Missions are only unlocked after certain points are met. The most basic threshold is after finishing a main story mission, wherein lots and lots of other side missions will unlock all over the map. Sometimes after completing a side mission, whether it involves actual monster slaying gameplay or just a bit of reading, one or a few new missions will unlock elsewhere. This can lead you down a brief quest rabbit hole dealing with a single topic, such as unlocking a hidden character. Early game, it can feel like you're merely looking at a mural with a few fireflies standing on it. It's a bit of a pain to move the reticle from one end of the map all the way to the other, since the area between is a wasteland of nothing. Late game, and after completing the story, it's impossible to parse what's what without highlighting it. And moving the reticle anywhere is annoying, since it desperately wants to rest on something, anything. Please let me show you a mission! I can't decide if I like this or not. On one hand, it encourages further gameplay. I want to see what opens up after a mission, and I want my characters to be the best they can be. I have to invest in them. On the other hand, it's rather irritating. The original Hyrule Warriors makes these things easily legible by separating them out. So why do I have to dig around this big map with a magnetically charged reticle? Now, of course, the solution is to just press the R button on the mission select and go to a vertical list of missions that are currently available. But there's so many items that are arranged vertically, they immediately go off screen. And the cursor can go all the way to the edge of the screen, instead of having a reading margin that nothing below or above the reticle is visible. Trying to find a specific item in this is somehow even more painful. And while I'm on menus, I have to get this out of my system, and I do apologize if I don't explain myself properly. Why is both Age of Calamity's and Breath of the Wild's inventory menu awful? In the blacksmith, when I'm managing weapons, I have a grid of weapons on the left with a big square on the right displaying specifics on the items I have highlighted. This doesn't seem so bad at first, but then the inventory space increases toward the right, behind the big information square. Why? Breath of the Wild did the same thing. The inventory expanded horizontally, not vertically. There was something screen-consuming on the right as well, but even so, the inventory insisted on going behind that something. As another example, in Age of Calamity and Breath of the Wild, the inventory screens separate items by category, such as if something is a meat or a mushroom. Oftentimes you'll find yourself having more unique items than a single page of grid spaces can support. In both scenarios of having lots of items all sorted nicely, you're going to have to navigate the menu quickly and easily. But to move through either situation, you do the same thing. You flick the right stick horizontally. That simply doesn't make sense to me. If I want to quickly go from mineral supplies to monster trophies, I flick the right stick over a bunch, but then that process gets gummed up by all the pages in each individual category requiring their own stick flick. This could so easily be fixed by having each additional grid page in the same category be vertical instead of horizontal. You switch categories by flicking the right stick left or right, and scroll within the same category by flicking it up or down. I saw that.
Do you mind pausing for a second?
Yeah.
Why are items in fucking progress-related one-on-ones? Please let me turn them off! You may continue.
Two kinds of people.
Just continue, please. I'm done. Now what I want to say is...
And I'd really like to point out, even if it doesn't really matter, can anybody see what they're doing on this menu? The Breath of the Wild map is pretty much one color, a brownish orange, which makes sense. It helps to make all the relevant items and like shrines and towers prominent, which is easy to locate. In Age of Calamity, the map is mostly one color, and so is everything else. The missions you haven't done yet are also orange, which blends in nicely with the background. And once you've completed that mission, it becomes a very pronounced glowing blue, which is completely useless because why would I want to find a mission I've already done much more easily than one I haven't? If it isn't a combat mission, the icon desaturates to a color nearly identical to the map's, even more severe in Death Mountain. Which is fine since there's nothing more I can do with that mission, so I don't ever need to think about it again. But with the magnetically charged cursor, it'll sometimes shoot off in a direction towards something invisible and useless.
Ooh.
And by the way, yes, I'm still on menus. Link in Age of Calamity has 3 different playable movesets. Zelda has 2. Why do they not have entirely separate weapon inventories for their individual movesets? Does it not seem the least bit unfair that for characters with only one playstyle, they'll never have too many weapons, but for Link, I'm constantly running out of room and never have enough space to plan ahead for my next weapon fusion? The original Hyrule Warriors managed this, and that game had 3 Links with dozens of ways to play them. I guess it is slightly convenient that a 2-handed Dragon Bone Club can be mashed into dust and snorted by a tree branch to give it boosted strong attack power, but that tiny oddity is not worth the constant clutter.
Oddity? I would consider that I would pay money to see that.
You can pay $60.
I did.
Something I've known about myself for a long time, but Age of Calamity really makes prominent,
He smells.
is that I do not enjoy artificial time limits in games. There are dozens and dozens of side missions in Age of Calamity with the basic phrasing of, here's a series of bosses you're pretty capable of killing as you are, but do it faster. As I mentioned, I'm a very casual game player. I play video games to relax from real-world things like deadlines and paranoia. What's the horrendous crime if I take 20 more seconds to chip down this boss's life meter to 0? So much of this game's side mission content is just time limits. If you remove time limits from these side missions entirely, 2 things would happen. I would have a better, more relaxed time playing, and these missions would become even more similar altogether because there would no longer be a constantly shifting number ticking down on screen right. Conversely, there are these rare side missions where you have to defend an allied stronghold against an onslaught of enemies for a certain amount of time. These missions are fun. The sheer amount of chaos on screen as the tide almost definitely turns against you is grueling, and things only continue to get worse and more cluttered, and all you can do is feebly swing your weapon and hope you can generate enough momentum in this shoulder-to-shoulder mob to actually deal some damage. But then, the clock ticks to 0, and you win! And all the monsters walk away like they were just pretending! It's hilarious! The only problem with these missions is that they seem...
Bitch!
Aww.
Sorry!
The only problem with these missions is that they seem to be early game and infrequent. Meanwhile, missions where you have to kill a whole lot of stuff within 3 minutes are used ad nauseum. The SHEIKAH slate is handled extremely strangely in this game. Allow me to go on a long tangent about the SHEIKAH slate.
Oh, okay.
Anytime you use a rune via the SHEIKAH slate is on cooldown for the next several seconds, meaning that the slate is useless and the runes are inaccessible. I can understand that, since that's sorta how it works in Breath of the Wild, and you shouldn't be able to spam stasis on everything. Except, why does the entire slate go into cooldown? In Breath of the Wild, to get more specific about how it works, if you use the bomb rune, only the bomb rune would go into cooldown. You still had access to every other rune until you used one of those. Then, that one would go into cooldown, and so on. But in Age of Calamity, the game where the SHEIKAH slate is mysteriously powered up by an artifact of the future which also exists in the present, it can only process one rune per every 10-second window. The primary reason why this confuses me is that, on the overworld map where you can select missions and upgrade things, you can upgrade the SHEIKAH slate by decreasing the cooldown on each of the 4 runes. Upgrading the bomb rune allows the SHEIKAH slate to be usable more quickly after using exclusively the bomb rune. So if I use the other 3 runes, I'm being punished? Should I prioritize using the bomb rune? Surely, with the way this system is designed in Age of Calamity, upgrading the SHEIKAH slate should decrease the one universal cooldown rather than piecemeal. I would prefer... excuse me. I would personally prefer to be able to use more than one rune at once, since that's how Breath of the Wild did it, and it would work for busier missions that have a lot of boss characters on screen. Doing half of both is ineffective. Every character has unique...
Don't half-ass 2 things. Whole-ass one thing.
Every character... Yeah. Every character has unique usage of the SHEIKAH slate. That is to say, every character has the standard 4 runes, but they all perform the 4 basic functions successfully. Sorry, excuse me. That is to say, every character has the 4 standard runes, and they all perform the 4 basic functions successfully, but each character goes about using it with different intricacies, or controls. On paper, that's really cool. Characters being further unique in how they play, even in how they press a button on a tablet, only enhances them as characters. In execution, why does Teba have to aim his stasis?
I thought we didn't remember his name.
I do. Why does Sidon have to hit his bombs like baseballs? Why can't everyone just summon an autonomous spider bomb like Zelda, or stab through stasis enemies like Mipha, or create an ice force field like Teba? Having unique executions of the SHEIKAH slate is nice, but it's also very irritating to know that some characters have worse or more cumbersome means of using runes than others. And this gets even more frustrating anytime you have to relearn or remember how runes are used for a character, and you're fumbling around with the controls, desperately hoping you don't miss a boss enemy's weakness window. There's no way to cancel out of using a rune. So, if you're in a high-pressure fight, most likely under a time limit, and you're frantically trying to select the right rune to use in such a short window of weakness-exposing opportunity, but then you happen to press the wrong face button and select the incorrect rune, there's nothing you can do. Your animation locked in your character's unique usage of the rune, and the SHEIKAH slate is in a cooldown state for the next several seconds. Meanwhile, the enemy can land several hits on you, and you go through multiple vulnerable phases without you being able to capitalize. In my opinion, as someone who isn't a game designer, developer, tester, or anyone important at all, this could be rectified relatively easily.
I think you're important.
Since every character has unique rune usages and animations, and a great deal of them involve brief pauses and slow motion before properly executing the attack, why not allow the player to dodge out of the move in that very first moment and then select a different rune? Or separate the universal cooldown so that multiple runes can be used at once. I'm not a fan of missions that have more than one big, complicated boss character on screen. Goodness forbid with a time limit as well.
How fucking ironic!
Age of Calamity uses the bestiary from Breath of the Wild with a few small additions that aren't really notable. Lynels, for example, are rather involved enemies to fight, with a lot of patterns to memorize and attack animations with specific windows of opportunity to perfect dodge and flurry rush. In the Age of Calamity combat, they're faster, tighter, and have even more attacks to learn and dodge. Your windows of opportunity to attack are rather small and infrequent compared to something like a Moblin. It's easy to say that a Lynel is a tough cookie, so fighting two at the same time is borderline unfair. When you overlap their attack patterns and their slim windows of counterattack, SHEIKAH SLATE moves, flurry rush dodges, so forth, it seems like the game is just shrugging and saying there's nothing you can do except chip them down over the course of 30 minutes. Oh, but wait! The time limit!
Yeah, you said 30 minutes.
What's up with the HAIRWIDTH trial missions? There were similar missions in the other Hyrule Warriors, wherein if you took one hit, you lost all your hearts and that was it. But the balance was, the same was true for enemies. They only took one hit no matter what enemy they were. But in Age of Calamity, all the enemies and bosses are still regular enemies and bosses. So you're the chosen of Hyrule, wielding the blade of evil's bane, ready to slay those monsters who defy the goddess. Except you have glass bones and paper skin, and
Every afternoon you break your arms. Every night you break your legs. At night you wait for your in agony as your heart attacks put you to sleep.
And all any of those moblins need to do is escape your field of view for a moment and do one of those weird attacks where they dash forward suddenly and graze you.
Or throw things at you.
It seems like some characters are just better than others. I understand this is probably true for any game in existence with multiple characters. Hey, you're playing one right now, James.
I have a stupid question. Are you still on menus?
No. No. Okay. No, I am not. But for the original Hyrule Warriors, I found myself pretty easily switching between anybody except Tingle. In Smash Bros, I may not like every character, but I can understand their viability and have watched people do incredible things with just about every character on the roster. In this game, Age of Calamity I should say, in this game, it feels like the only top row of 4 characters are any good. Link is fine, he's default. It feels like a good chunk of the game was designed around him. He has normal SHEIKAH SLATE animations, a bow for long distance headshots, a shield for perfect blots, and an infinitely... perfect blocks.
Perfect blocks.
Yeah. And an infinitely better two-handed moveset. Impa is unbelievable. Being able to clone yourself makes you into a one-person army. When I have all my clones against a mob of enemies, my special meter fills in seconds and I'm untouchable. Zelda is whatever. Her combo list is unlike every other character in the game, so I didn't really care to learn her.
I didn't either.
Her second form, though, is very good. Being able to hit ZR and then hold ZL and mash Y to microwave boss enemies is a suitable power for the goddess Hylia.
Fun story. We got her second weapon from an amiibo way early in the game, so we had a chance to learn her before she actually got it in the story.
Yeah.
It was great.
It's pretty good. Thanks, amiibo.
Okay, we're good. Go ahead.
Mipha's comparatively normal, but her water spout power lets her jump up in midair and hit most boss enemies' weak points and eats their meter. Plus, her special attack heals her. Meanwhile, I guess I just don't get other characters. Maybe it's because I just wasn't as much into Breath of the Wild's world that all this fan service to a 3.5-year-old game at the time of release doesn't do anything for me, but for some reason or another, I just had no incentive to use very many other characters beyond their required missions. Rivali is okay. I liked him when I first got him because, haha, you can't touch me. But that's really his only use. The problem is, a couple of his combos send him back down to the ground where he's vulnerable and less effective. And none of his ground combos send him back airborne. So if you want to stay airborne, thus invincible, you're forced to just mash the basic attack button and wait. It's not very fun. I understand this is basically me complaining that a broken character isn't more broken, but to that point, I raise you, Impa. I really want to like Daruk. He's got the same kind of gimmick as Tablet Zelda, with setting up the magma and then setting it off, but with a regular combo list. He just feels a bit stiff and awkward. Also, only some of his combos set up magma to blow up, which is confusing. A bunch of his combos even lead up to the exact same finisher, doing a Goron roll move like in Majora's Mask. What's up with that? Urbosa's fine. Charting up the electric meter is annoying if you do it manually, and I end up forgetting about its existence otherwise. Her electric attacks feel variably effective, and mashing X to keep it going doesn't seem to do as much damage as the investment deserves. Her special attack, though, is excellent. No messing around. Teba's pretty good. When I first got him, I figured they couldn't do any better than...
I was behind him. I was behind him. Okay, continue.
Teba's pretty good. When I first got him, I figured they couldn't do any better with a winged archer than Rivali, and I was right, but Teba's still good. Being able to mash X after every strong attack to just rain arrows on bosses is a great shortcut to their weak point, but his regular attack combo gives me motion sickness literally every time it happens. He just moves so much, and the camera can't keep up. I don't understand Riju very well. Watching her momentum with Patricia is enjoyable, to be sure, but determining what exactly is causing damage and where I'm still vulnerable to enemy attacks is a little difficult.
Who the fuck is Patricia?
Riju and Patricia is the little girl with the seal, the Garuda.
Oh, I know Riju, I just didn't know Patricia. Oh. Like, that doesn't seem like a very Legend of Zelda name.
Patricia's her seal, her land seal.
I know,
her sand
but
seal.
Patricia?
Yeah.
It's like Larry. The Legend of Larry.
It's a pet. Sidon is very confusing. Like, I understand who he is and what he's about and how he plays, and how sexy he is. But for that last one, how he plays...
Give me that fish.
Like
you bit your lip at that.
Yeah, like, I understand who he is and what he's about and how he plays. But for that last one, why? Why make him, out of every character, a timing tester? If I don't hit ZR at the proper moment for every strong attack, he has an ineffective combo. If I do hit ZR properly, he does what appears to be a standard strong attack combo that every other character does without going through the extra effort. So why bother? Sword Shield Link does this way more elegantly by simply holding the X button after a strong attack, and that further extends the combo instead of holding it back. Hestu seems fun. I abandoned him rather quickly since he seemed so big and clunky, but sending waves of Koroks everywhere to do the work for me seemed convenient.
You could pick your nose, scratch your ass, or, I don't know, lick something.
I disagree with King Roam. His form shift exists strictly for fan service. In Age of Calamity, where the Calamity was defeated before 100 years could pass. Yeah.
Just look at King Roam. No! Stop that!
Yeah. In Age of Calamity, where the Calamity was defeated before 100 years could pass, King Roam wouldn't be a hermit, and wouldn't have a hermit outfit. And if Roam was royalty, if Roam is royalty, maybe he wasn't born into it, but we can assume he became royalty at a younger age than his hermit self, he wouldn't have ever been a hermit with an oozing mashed potato beard. So why have him shift forms to something that shouldn't exist? And at that end, why is one form so much better than the other? His king form is slow, clunky, and has an awkward stance. His hermit form is really fast, has attacks that cover the entire screen, and keeps constant momentum. But his special attack, weak point smashes, and some combos automatically switch between forms, forcing you to either adapt to whichever form is present, or mash ZR and hope you don't take damage. It's like King Roam and Rivali swap notes in How to Fight School, and interpersonal relationships school. The Great Fairies are unplayable. Maybe it's just me, but it seemed like their first training mission against the teleporting, extremely agile Yiga Blade Masters only accentuated their weaknesses. The fairies are so big that I can't tell what's in front of me or if my attacks are landing. They're so slow, I end up frantically dodging because whatever I'm fighting is able to get around the pauses in my combo. Switching between the four fairies is a fun idea, but I'd much rather just choose a fairy as a costume before entering battle and then have a singular ZR ability. With the 4 total ZR abilities, I didn't bother learning any of their uses. Monk Maz Kosha is a hilarious idea for a playable character. I just really wish he played like a DLC monk battle in Breath of the Wild instead of a bunch of nonsensical references and fan service. Also, I cannot figure out how he collects symbols and grows big. Are those two related? Do I grow big to collect runes? Does collecting more runes make me grow bigger?
Do you grow runes to get runes, to play with runes?
Is there any point to growing bigger since it only happens for a second? By the way, talking about Mipha reminded me, what's up with the healing in this game? What's up with the healing in this game? It's legitimate...
What is up with
What is up with the... It's legitimately such a terrible healing system, I cannot believe it exists. To heal in Age of Calamity, you need apples, which are stored in an apple meter, right next to your magic rod meter. The meters are a little odd, but okay. But these are shabby uncooked apples that heal only a small amount of health. You need to cook them to heal more. So for a game that takes place in Breath of the Wild world, which itself is a game that heavily featured cooking, combining ingredients, using campfires, memorizing recipes, how do you think you would cook apples? You cook apples by intentionally taking fire damage. Hurting yourself via an attack from a fire wizrobe or a fire moblin or whatever, then cooks the apples you have in your inventory. As a brief aside, no matter how many apples you have at the time you take fire damage, whether you have a little bit of apple meter or just a bit more than half of apple meter, your apples are cooked for as long as you have apples. And if you collect apples later, that brand new apple is presumed cooked. If you use apples and later collect more apples, those apples are cooked.
Oops.
So long as you don't use up all of your apples, which is to say run your meter down to empty apples, your apples will remain cooked. Only after using up all of your apples will your apples be fresh and uncooked. And I feel I should clarify something. As far as I can tell, apples are the only in-battle means of healing your character aside from Mipha's special. The recipes that you cook prior to entering battle do not heal you, and you do not carry them in your inventory. They're strictly a replacement for the apothecary feature from the original Hyrule Warriors, where you brewed potions to augment your stats or boost rewards or whatever, strictly during that one mission. And for being your sole source of recovery, apples are awful at it. There are overworld missions where you can upgrade the amount of health that they grant you, but it seems barely noticeable.
You can increase the amount of apple your meter can hold. Your pockets get a little bigger every time.
Additionally, this apple meter that I belabor, it does not refill between missions. However much apple you had at the end of previous missions is how much you will start the next mission with. So if you fought a Lionel in a side mission and you had a tough time and used a lot of apple, and then you walk into a complicated story mission that's going to have a lot of steps and enemies and boss monsters, turns out that was a dumb thing to do and you're going to pay for it. What you're actually supposed to do is tough Lionel mission that consumes resources, then one or two mindless boring missions that you're massively over-leveled for so you can wander around smashing crates for apple. Then, one mission in Death Mountain against fire enemies so you can stand there waiting for a fire keys to smack you and inadvertently cook all of your apples. And then the long, complicated story mission for which you are now fully equipped. Isn't that so much simpler?
You're supposed to... It's apple, not
Oh,
apples,
right.
Andy.
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
You're right. That's impolite of me.
Yes, it is. You gotta cook the apple in your meter before you can move on.
Anyway, so we've established that apples need to be cooked and are irreplaceable despite ineffective. To prevent your health meter from lowering in this game, you suffer the anxiety of watching a different meter fall to 0. If that apple meter does fall to 0, you are punished by having your future healing less effective. If you want your future healing to be more effective, you are punished because you're taking implicative fire damage in order to cook your apples. And in order to heal that fire damage, you need to use your apple meter. It's a bananas system.
Yeah. Continue.
There's a good number of quality of life features in Age of Calamity that are not present at the start of the game, but are present. For example, there are Korok seeds in story missions and some side missions. Want to know how many there are, or which side missions to look in? At the start of the game, too bad, go cry in your Makar mask. Go cry in your Makar mask. Later
Stupid question. Huh? What do you get if you collect them all? I will blot this part out if it's a spoiler.
In Age of Calamity?
Yeah.
They're used...
Don't you get the scarf?
Yeah, you get the outfit.
Oh, okay. Never mind. We're good.
Later in the game, just do this teeny tiny, itty bitty little side mission right here, and you'll see how many Korok seeds there are per mission. I can't decide if I like this or not. On one hand, it's incentive to play further in the game, and it makes going back to old missions a little more clear-cut. But on the other, I think it also speaks to how much clutter there is on screen, with all these missions and how unevenly scattered they are. How that useful mission that can feel hidden underneath a whole lot of faff.
Faff is a word.
I'm kind of sick of how the levels are designed in Age of Calamity. The maps are nice and big, which I do enjoy, but there are a number of areas that are a variation of small interior room with lots of rubble around the place. You cannot walk on rubble, which means there are lots of small crevices and alleys that you will get cornered in or stuck on. It's very annoying to be camera focused on a boss enemy and trying to dodge an attack, only for the camera to get stuck on a decorative collapsed pillar, or for my character to trip over on a brick that's the same color as the ground. Can I not run on top of at least some of this stuff to fill a little of this space? These rooms are so small to be fighting giant bosses in anyway. The smallest bit more space to move would mean the world. If these levels are going to be designed with such intricate detail, could I maybe zoom the minimap in a bit further? I'm someone who references the minimap pretty frequently, almost constantly having it zoomed in so as to know where to go. If my character is going to be stuck on a random bit of rubble, which on the minimap is only denoted by a tiny black pixel, I feel like I could be forewarned and forearmed. At that end, what's with the crates in this game? You can break open wooden and metal crates to get rupees, apples, and even Koroks, except when you can't. Sometimes there are just these invincible crates made with wood ++ or something. I understand some of them are in the unreachable, but some of them are right there in front of me. Something missing in Age of Calamity are pickups lying around the place. In the first Hyrule Warriors, you could find shiny prisms that filled up your special meter, as well as hearts. There was also a magic meter, but whatever. Age of Calamity doesn't have pickup prisms. You charge your special meter completely manually by attacking enemies. There's not much wrong with that. I suppose. It makes the special meter a slight bit more valuable, but alternative methods to fill the meter would be a good fallback on during side missions against back-to-back bosses.
Or healing yourself with hearts that you find. Pickups are important. Sorry, healing yourself with apple that you find.
Ooh, apple.
Apple.
Love apple.
Apple. I need more apple. Anyway.
That is the entire document.
No fucking way that's the entire document.
That's the entire document.
I am appalled. Really, that was it? You ended on that? No pickups? No big giant...
It got to... Like, it started with bigger concerns and slowly got more nitpicky.
Nitpicky is fine. I just figured you would end on something big. Just like, my final note on this game is...
Nah.
Really?
I mean, it wasn't really meant to be a cohesive article. You can tell that I didn't have any transitional phrases.
Transitional?
Transitional phrases, like...
I thought that was a new internet word I didn't know yet.
No.
I'm old!
Like, I went from that tiny oddity is not worth the constant clutter, and then something I've known about myself for a long time.
I mean, that's fine. You're allowed to do that.
It's not a very good writing style.
There's now...
If I were presenting this a different way, I would fix that.
Well, no, I asked you just to jot down all of your thoughts in no cohesive manner in a document that you could read aloud while I played Smash Brothers. So make sure that you had the maximum amount of minimum fun, and I had the maximum amount of anger at this game. Because I want to show you something that still fucking bothers me to this day. Okay. And you can continue, you can do what you're doing, I don't care what fucking difficulty it is.
Okay.
Wow!
What?
I guess my only question for your whole rant there is,
Whoa.
Fucking...
Yeah, that would bother me too.
I don't even know what happened!
God, this game sucks, huh? Ugh. I mean, get it together, game devs.
No, it's...
My uncle works at Nintendo and he would never allow that.
Neither would mine. We're related, so it makes sense. God, I fucking hate items on fucking progress-related one-on-ones! Now, hold on. This is what I'm talking about. Not this, the next screen.
Okay.
How do you know he's giant? How do you know he's giant?
Is
Before the battle starts!
Oh.
There's no indicator. There's no giant Ridley, big Ridley, little bit smaller Ridley. There's none of that. You don't know.
Just right, Ridley.
What is it? Size appropriate Ridley? That was my one note. That's something
that's fair.
Fucking
Yeah.
bothers me. It's
That's
so
fair.
fucking dumb. Like that looks like giant Bayonetta. Size appropriate Bayonetta.
Bayonetta's always giant.
She was the Big Mommy Vampire before Big Mommy Vampire.
Is
Anyway.
she's a witch. She's a Right.
Big Mommy Witch before Big Mommy Vampire. Anyway.
I should also say that I did, okay. I mentioned at the disclaimer at the very beginning, I don't know if you remember that anymore. I certainly don't.
60 years ago.
Hundreds of hours into the first 3 Hyrule Warriors, 100% completed Breath of the Wild. Age of Calamity, I 100% beat it in 70 hours.
Yes, it's a 70-hour game.
Which...
We haven't even beaten beaten any of the Hyrule Warriors
hundreds of hours
games.
into all 3 Hyrule Warriors.
And
we
still nothing!
have not even...
We haven't scratched
Yeah.
half of it yet.
We're still chipping into them every so often. Like, that's not the hundreds of hours still haven't beaten them. That's not a statement on like, oh, these games suck. We'll never beat them.
They're so fun.
There's so much, and we keep going back to them because it's just so good and easy to pick up.
And put down.
Age of Calamity. It was just such a
God, it was such a fucking slog. I didn't want to
just
play it
such a chore.
And then there's one thing I want to say actually about Age of Calamity. I fucking hate the red moon. I hate the blood moon. I hate it. I hate it. I know it's in the original game, but they left so much out of Age of Calamity from Breath of the Wild. Why couldn't they leave that out? Or explain it maybe? Fuck you, Marth! Because during our last battle, it happened twice. It happened... Fuck, Andy and I were sitting there like, are you kidding me? Our supplies were running low, our health was gone,
Yeah,
we
well,
had no
the apple
apple
meter.
left. And the blood moon happened fucking twice. We were fucking livid. Die! We were livid. It sucked and I hated it. I don't think I hate any mechanic more in the Breath of the Wild timeline than I do the blood moon. It is garbage. I hate it, and I hate it, and I hate it. Oh, man. I'm not going to win against this Marth, and it's frustrating me greatly.
Whoa, that was weird.
Ow. Are we good, Andy?
I think.
Okay, thank you guys for joining in for this episode of Smash Talk. I don't remember what number it is, but that'll be present on the title. We have nothing else to say about Age of Calamity. That is a game we've complete that we will most likely never return to. Thank you guys for joining in for this episode of Smash Talk. I don't remember what our outro is. Bye!